The CIA Gateway tapes, the government secret that can reprogram your reality. In the 1970s, the United States government made a decision that has never been fully explained to the public. The CIA began funding a classified research program to determine whether human consciousness could be deliberately altered, expanded, and weaponized. Not with drugs, not with surgery, with sound. The program consumed millions of taxpayer dollars over more than a decade. The scientists involved were not fringe theorists. They were military officers, intelligence analysts, and researchers with the highest security clearances in the country. And what they found did not go the way anyone expected. They went in looking for spies with psychic abilities. What they came out with was something far more dangerous to the existing order. A system that any ordinary person can use to reprogram their own consciousness, dissolve self-limiting beliefs, and access levels of perception that most people are never told exist. The documents remained classified for decades. When they were finally released to the public in 2003, almost no one was paying attention. But the information inside those files describes a technology so precise, so repeatable, and so powerful that once understood, it cannot be unseen. What the government found, what they tried to keep quiet, and what happens to the people who actually use it. To understand the Gateway tapes, it is necessary to understand what was happening in American intelligence during the Cold War. By the late 1960s, the CIA had credible intelligence suggesting that the Soviet Union was investing heavily in what they called psychotronics, the study of whether the human mind could perceive information beyond the 5 physical senses, and whether that perception could be turned into a military asset. The Americans could not afford to fall behind. What became known as Project Stargate was a collection of research initiatives funded by the CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the Army Intelligence and Security Command. The program ran from the early 1970s through 1995. Its core mission was to investigate remote viewing, the alleged ability of trained individuals to perceive events, locations, and information at a distance using nothing but their own consciousness. The documented results defied conventional explanation. Subjects who had never met were able to describe the contents of sealed envelopes. Individuals in sensory isolation could accurately sketch buildings on the other side of the planet. Military personnel reported accessing information about targets they had never been briefed on. The government was not funding this research because they believed it was impossible. They were funding it because they were afraid it was real. What they did not anticipate was that the techniques developed to train remote viewers had a far broader application. Because the deeper the researchers went into the mechanics of expanded consciousness, the more they realized they had stumbled onto a systematic method for altering the fundamental relationship between a human being and their own reality. That method was already being developed independently by a man named Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe was not a mystic. He was a businessman, a successful radio producer based in Virginia, with no interest in meditation and no expectation of what was about to happen to him in 1958. Monroe began spontaneously leaving his body. Not in a metaphorical sense. He would lie down, and his consciousness would detach from his physical form and move through space in ways that had no rational explanation. He documented these experiences the way an engineer documents test results. He was not trying to prove anything. He was trying to understand what was happening. Over the following decade, Monroe developed a reproducible method for inducing these states. He discovered that specific combinations of sound frequencies, delivered separately to each ear through stereo headphones, could drive the brain into altered states of consciousness on command. He called this technology Hemi-Sync, short for hemispheric synchronization. The principle is not mysterious. The brain naturally produces electrical activity at different frequencies depending on its state. Deep sleep produces one frequency. Alert waking consciousness produces another. Hemi-Sync works by presenting 2 slightly different audio tones simultaneously, one in each ear. The brain perceives the mathematical difference between those tones as a third frequency and begins to synchronize its own electrical activity to match it. In 1974, Monroe founded the Monroe Institute in Virginia, the institutional home of what he called the Gateway program, a structured, progressive training system designed to take ordinary people through increasingly advanced states of consciousness, step by step, in a controlled way. The CIA found Monroe. They began funding research at the Institute. The classified report eventually written about the Gateway process by United States Army Lieutenant Colonel Wayne M. McDonnell concluded that the system worked, not as a matter of opinion, as a matter of documented, reproducible result. That report is available today on the official CIA website. The government read it and classified it. They did not want the general public to have this information. The Gateway program does not ask anyone to believe anything. It asks participants to follow a precise sequence of exercises and observe what happens. The experiences are graded across what Monroe called focus levels, each representing a deeper state of awareness. Focus 10 is where everything begins. The body enters deep physical relaxation, while the mind remains completely alert and lucid. This is not sleep. It is a third state that most people have never deliberately accessed. In Focus 10, the constant internal voice that evaluates, judges, and worries loses its grip. What remains is awareness itself, clean and precise, without the distortion of anxiety or habitual commentary. Even at this first level, practitioners report significant changes. Stress responses reduce. Intuitive clarity improves. The ability to make decisions without emotional interference sharpens. People describe it as resetting the entire operating system of the mind. Focus. 12 takes the process further. At this level, practitioners report heightened sensitivity to the emotional states of others, the ability to sense the intention behind spoken words, and access to creative capacities that exceed their normal baseline. Focus 15. And beyond, enter territory that is harder to describe in conventional language. The boundary between individual consciousness and a larger field of awareness becomes permeable. Practitioners describe accessing information they could not have known through ordinary means. Monroe himself documented hundreds of such cases across decades of research. The most advanced levels involve what the program documents describe as out-of-body experience, the full separation of conscious awareness from the physical body, with the ability to navigate non-physical environments with clarity and intention. It is not necessary to arrive at the most advanced levels to experience real transformation. Focus. 10 alone, practiced consistently, produces changes in mental clarity, emotional regulation, and perception that most people would consider significant. The question is simply how far a person is prepared to go. The Gateway program operates through 4 core principles that work together as an integrated system. Each one is necessary. None can be removed without compromising the whole. The first principle is Hemi-Sync. Underneath the surface texture of waves and ambient tone, 2 precisely calibrated frequencies are delivered, one to each ear. The brain produces the difference between them as a binaural beat and entrains its own electrical activity to that frequency. Stereo headphones are not optional. Without separate delivery to each ear, the binaural effect does not occur. The second principle is rhythmic full-body breath work. This is not casual deep breathing. It is a structured practice in which breath is used to deliberately circulate energy through the body. Inhalation draws fresh awareness into every cell. Exhalation releases accumulated tension, emotional residue, and the physical correlates of unresolved psychological states. Breathwork draws from Eastern philosophy and transcendental meditation. Its function is specific: to prepare the nervous system for the altered states the acoustic technology induces. The third principle is tonal chanting. Specific vocal tones further calibrate the brain's electrical activity, the same way a musician tunes an instrument. The chanting also gently occupies the analytical, evaluative parts of the brain with a rhythmic, repetitive task. This reduces their interference with the intuitive modes of awareness the program is designed to access. The inner critic is not silenced by force. It is given something harmless to do while the deeper work proceeds. The fourth principle is the Energy Tools Protocol. This begins every session without exception and consists of 3 specific steps. First, the energy conversion box. Before entering any altered state, practitioners create a vivid mental container into which they place every concern, fear, anxiety, and intrusive thought that might compete for attention during the session. The box has a heavy lid. It is closed and sealed. The psychological mechanism here is documented in clinical literature. Deliberate compartmentalization is one of the most effective tools for managing cognitive load and reducing emotional interference that disrupts focused states. Second, the resonant energy balloon, or rebal. A protective field of energy is visualized surrounding the entire body. It is actively held, consciously maintained, and charged with the practitioner's directed awareness. Its function is to establish clear boundaries between the individual's consciousness and external influences that might disrupt the integrity of the session. Third, the Gateway Affirmation, spoken before every session with full presence and deliberate intention as a precise declaration of the practitioner's purpose and state of awareness. It is not wishful thinking. It is the moment at which the practitioner formally assumes command of their own energy system and steps into the practice with clarity about what they are doing and why. These 4 principles form a sequence, and the sequence is not negotiable. The architecture of the program is not arbitrary. Every element is there for a reason. The affirmation that opens every gateway session is not a motivational statement. It is a philosophical position. Each line encodes a specific claim about the nature of consciousness and reality that the entire program is built upon. The affirmation begins, "I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world." This is worth examining not as a spiritual belief, but as a proposition about physical reality. Modern physics does not describe the human body as a solid object. It describes the body as a configuration of energy fields interacting within a larger field structure. The atoms that compose the human body are almost entirely empty space. The apparent solidity of matter is a consequence of electromagnetic force. What a person experiences as their physical body is, at the level of quantum mechanics, an extraordinarily complex pattern of energy and motion. If that is what a person is, then the question of what they can perceive is not limited by the boundaries of the physical senses. The senses are instruments calibrated to detect a specific range of the energy spectrum. They are not detectors of all of reality. They are filters. The affirmation continues, "I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me." The language is precise. The verbs are active and commanding. The practitioner is not asking to be given something. They are declaring the intention to actively engage with a larger field of reality on their own terms, with clarity of purpose and conscious direction. The affirmation closes with a request for guidance and protection from any influence that might provide less than the practitioner's stated desires. This is the acknowledgement that the practitioner does not navigate the expanded field alone. The program does not require any specific spiritual framework to make this declaration meaningful. What it requires is sincerity of intent and precision of declaration. What the affirmation ultimately teaches, through repetition over many sessions, is the most important lesson the program offers. Consciousness is not a passive receiver of reality. It is an active participant in the construction of reality. The practitioner who internalizes that understanding is no longer the same person they were before they started. The kind of consciousness work described in this video depends on one factor that is rarely discussed: cellular health. The altered states accessed through the Gateway program are neurological events. They are produced by changes in brainwave activity and in the regulation of the nervous system. The quality of those states is directly connected to the quality of the biology that produces them. Red light therapy has emerged as one of the most scientifically supported tools for optimizing cellular function. Specific wavelengths of red and near-infrared light penetrate the skin and reach the mitochondria, stimulating cellular energy production, reducing systemic inflammation, and accelerating tissue repair. The effects on neurological function are significant. Regular red light therapy is associated with improvements in sleep quality, cognitive clarity, and stress recovery, precisely the conditions that support deep and consistent meditation practice. Live Zoom has developed the Vera series for home use at medical-grade clinical standards. A single session delivers the equivalent light energy of 2 sessions with conventional consumer devices due to verified and published irradiance specifications. The device is flexible, operates in multiple configurations including a belt format, and requires only 10 to 20 minutes per session to produce measurable results. The link to Live Zoom is in the description below. The accounts of people who have worked consistently with the Gateway program describe a consistent pattern of change. The changes happen in layers, from the inside out. The first changes are the most practical. Mental clarity improves. The internal noise of anxiety, self-doubt, and habitual negative thinking begins to quiet. Decisions that previously required enormous effort become easier. Patterns of behavior that the individual had tried and failed to change for years begin to shift without the struggle those changes normally require. This is not coincidental. The deep, altered states produced by the Gateway program create direct access to the level of consciousness where patterns are encoded. Beliefs about what is possible, what a person deserves, what they are capable of. These are not stored in the conscious mind. They are stored in the deep structures of the nervous system, in the implicit memory systems that operate below ordinary awareness. The Gateway program provides a systematic way to reach those structures and work with them directly. More advanced practitioners describe changes that go beyond the psychological. Physical health improvements, the ability to manage pain through directed attention, changes in external circumstances that correspond to internal shifts. The program does not claim these as universal outcomes. They are reported consistently enough across independent sources to be worth noting. The risks are real and should not be minimized. The program opens perceptual channels that, once opened, remain more accessible than they were before. For most people, this is experienced as an expansion of awareness that enriches every dimension of life. For individuals dealing with unresolved trauma that has not been adequately supported, the opening of those channels before adequate preparation can be destabilizing. This is the reason for the warnings embedded throughout the program itself. The appropriate attitude is neither fear nor recklessness. It is the same attitude a skilled mountaineer brings to a significant climb. Deep respect for what the terrain demands, thorough preparation, and the wisdom to turn back when conditions are not right. For those who approach it correctly, the Gateway program does not merely change habits. It changes the fundamental orientation of the practitioner toward reality. The internal landscape expands, and that expansion, once it has occurred, becomes the new ground from which the rest of life is navigated. That is the discovery the government made in the 1970s. That is what they spent millions of dollars trying to contain. And that is what has been available to anyone with internet access and a pair of stereo headphones since 2003. The Gateway tapes are available at no cost on YouTube and Spotify. The declassified CIA documents, including the full military report on the Gateway process written by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne M. McDonnell, are publicly accessible on the official CIA website. There is no paywall, no required membership. The information is there in its original form, waiting to be used. For those who choose to begin, the protocol is precise. Stereo headphones are required. A quiet space where interruption is unlikely is strongly recommended. The body should be in complete physical relaxation, lying flat or fully reclined, so that no muscular effort is required. Begin with the energy conversion box. Take time with this step. Every concern, every intrusive thought, every fear that comes to mind should be placed into the box with full conscious intention. The box is closed. This is not a metaphor. The brain responds to vivid, intentional mental imagery in ways that produce real neurophysiological change. Build the rebel. Visualize the protective field expanding from the core of the body outward in all directions. Hold the visualization with clarity. The field is strong, defined, and sovereign. Speak the affirmation, with the full weight of conscious intent behind every word. Then follow the tape. The first sessions will not necessarily be dramatic. There will be a point where the practitioner becomes aware that something has changed. The usual noise has quieted. Something underneath it is becoming perceptible. That is the beginning. And once it has been experienced, it is unmistakable. Do not rush. The program was designed as a progression for a reason. Skipping ahead is not confidence. It is impatience. And impatience at these levels produces exactly the kind of disorienting experience that gives the program an undeserved reputation for danger. Respect the sequence. Trust the architecture. The system was designed by a man who spent 30 years mapping this territory with the precision of a scientist and the courage of an explorer. The map is accurate. The territory is real. There is a practical observation that runs through every serious account of expanded consciousness practice. Reading about it is not the same as doing it. Watching a video about these states is not the same as entering them. The only way to know what the Gateway program actually produces is to work with it, consistently, with discipline and honesty, over sufficient time. The government understood this. A technology that teaches people they are more than their conditioning, more than their circumstances, more than the story they have been given about their own limits, does not serve systems designed to keep people predictable. The documents are declassified, the tapes are free. The only authority that determines whether this becomes a living practice or remains a curiosity is the person who decides what to do after this video ends. There is one question left. What happens next is entirely up to the person asking it.